Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Here to share with you once again a contemplative focus. And in this, we hope that you will be stimulated to pursue the meaning of of the focus in your own experience, and to take up meditation if you're not meditating, and to join the party where you can discover the self that you really are. So, with that said, the focus that I want to share with you today is life creates meaning for the fun of it. We obviously don't experience life that way for the most part. Most people have lots of meaning in their life, and it's always usually very dramatic and very personalized, and on and on and on. It involves various identifications that they have. So when we identify with our physical manifestation, our bodies, all is survival, and life is lived with intense meaning, because when you're identified with the physical body and at the same time you're separate from all the objects external to your subjective experience of you, then it's survival, or at the best, it's competition for what you need to survive. But when we experience grace, when we have an awakening moment, then we experience the essential nature of who we truly are, and then the meaning of life changes radically. And as we pursue the meaning of that experience, which is inevitable because it changes you dramatically, and from that new perspective that you have because you had that experience, which is overwhelming and just overshadows everything you've had before, is gradually comes to your awareness that consciousness is having an illusory, that you are consciousness having an illusory human experience. Consciousness is eternal, and whatever it chooses to experience is an illusion, and it's temporary. If it has a birth, it has a death, and that is not consciousness itself, because consciousness always was and always will be what it is. So, most of us have gone through a life where, as we were growing up and acquired more awareness of our surroundings, we developed the ability to communicate with language and to understand in some way what was being said to us, what was being implied in people's conversations with us, and so forth and so on. We started to accumulate identifications based on self-worth or the lack of it. Your parents may say something when you're very young and without intending anything negative towards you, and yet you can very easily have interpreted that statement or those words as something very negative, like you weren't wanted or you weren't worthy of their care, and so forth and so on. And this is very common in the human experience, especially in the involutionary cycle, where we are extremely fragmented. We have no awareness at all of our true nature. So we accumulate all this data, and then we go through life regurgitating our responses to that data whenever anything replicates the words or the context that gave us a negative self-perspective, then we react to it as something we don't want. We want to push it away or forget it or change it. So we're constantly in battle with who we think we are and who we experience ourselves on the basis of our memory, and yet we have very little or no experience of ourselves as we truly are, which is changing moment to moment to moment. And it is consciousness itself. So we're really far away from the truth of who we are in the involutionary cycle of the play of consciousness. And we call it a play because from the perspective, from an enlightened perspective of who we are, it is a play. And it's not to be taken seriously, because death is not death and life is forever. And that's really the truth of who we are and what life is. Your body dies, your ego dies, because that was a temporary creation so that you could have the human experience. But it's not the be-all and end-all by any means of who you are. Huh? You're not going to die. You're not going to be anything other than what you choose to be. And this is where becoming aware is a very vital part of your long-term experience, where you might go from one life to another in an evolutionary cycle. That process of life after life, what we call and develop what we call karma and so forth. It's just simply having different experiences, either as a human being and not being very aware, or as an enlightening being and growing that experience through the human experience. Now, as you go through these different levels of experience on Earth as a human, you are developing yourself and becoming, shall we say, fulfilled in whichever experience that is. If it's the involutionary cycle and your life is full of self-doubt and a lot of self-worth issues, and you don't have any direct experience of your own spiritual self, then you're going to be fulfilled in that experience until such time as you've had enough of it. And once you reach that point, then the enlightening experience happens in your life. It's a built-in, it's the way polarities work. And remember, this is a field of experience that we're in here. It's a field of experience that was created so that we could have the ego and have that identification and go through all the play of consciousness as something other than consciousness, only to rediscover ourselves and celebrate ourselves in the moment of that discovery and onward afterward. So it's really what consciousness has created out of a creative impulse to celebrate itself and to grow its own bliss. You know, you consider, the way I see this a lot of times is that there's billions of people in the world right now, and right now the world is going through an extreme fragmentation process as a whole, and yet here and there people are having an awakening experience, and they are consciousness having and experiencing the celebration of the truth of what it is and what we are going through as consciousness, not as a victimized human being. So this is a celebration ongoing, and it happens here and there constantly. Although we don't hear it, we don't see it, and we're not aware of that. We're only aware of the noisy part of creation, which is the default negative, which is the contractive part of our experience, and that is the negative. You know, you turn on the news, you read a newspaper, you talk to people who are engrossed in negativity, and they're convinced that we're all going to die and so forth and so on, and you get into these scenarios and get hooked on stuff like this very easily. That's why they're around, because people gravitate to that. Fear-based experience attracts like experience to itself. And so the game goes on and on and on until it doesn't. And that's just the way the creation game works. We don't take it as a game, though. It's not a game when you're not aware. It's a suffering. And it can be a very radical suffering, which is what stimulates us eventually to open up to another possibility, that possibly this is not real. And when we do, however we do that, that's when the teacher appears. That's when we experience our essential nature. And from that moment on, all that we have been before and all we thought we were before is turned upside down. I know in my experience that was the case, because I had an awakening experience long ago, and it in the relative field of time as we experienced, it wasn't that long. It only took a moment, but that moment had so much power that it wiped. Nothing could compete with it in terms of how it impacted me and how I experienced my world afterward. But there I was, in my ego again. And I had no understanding of the play of consciousness. I had no understanding of the creation game. I had no understanding of a holistic lifestyle and the concept of wholeness was not with me either. So I had to start from scratch again. I was wondering what's next, what do I do? And I automatically gravitated towards a completely different lifestyle where I began to meditate, I began to change my diet, I began to do all the things that meditators do, essentially to get that experience back again. I was so joyful and so beautiful and so wonderful that I would give anything to get that experience back as a ongoing experience, not something that just happened and was gone. Although it wasn't really gone, I only saw it that way because that was my conditioning as a human being for so many lifetimes, right? So anyway, as I was going through this, I journeyed many years meditating this way and then meditating that way and then not meditating at all and wondering where I was and what I was and did I do something wrong? Was I on the right path? And so forth and so on. But I really didn't have anybody to turn to in my immediate world to get any answers to those questions. So I began to seek that out, and when I began to do that, I opened up another door. And that door was to allow myself to be exposed to someone who could teach me the meaning of my experience and to help me along the way in my path to develop the experience of wholeness as a constant. So it took a while for me to open myself up to that because egos don't like masters, is what Maya put it, because enlightening beings scare people. They scare egos because what they mean to an ego is the death of the ego. Their whole presence pulls you towards your truth, whereas the ego cannot go there because the ego is a temporary, illusory manifestation so that you can have the human experience, and it has nothing to do with anything with you beyond that. So once you're done with the ego, you just move on. You don't die, you just move on. You may take on another ego, you may take on some other more subtle manifestation. It's who knows, but the point is that you don't have to consider that life is over after this life. And you don't have to consider that you can ever do anything wrong, because the truth is you are consciousness. You are the one consciousness that is all and everything. And you're orchestrating this show, and that includes your ego. So what you're doing and what you're going through in life is exactly what you have to go through in order to utilize this life and maximize it for the purpose that for the reason why you came into the world to have this life in the first place. So that's really the truth of everyone, irregardless of what it may look like. It doesn't mean that we don't have empathy, we don't sympathize with people, we don't try to help people because they're suffering. Certainly this is a great thing to do, and it's part of what we do to grow our own heart, to bring people from being external and foreign to us to another aspect of who we are. And of course we want to help people when they're suffering, we want to help them along in their life. And so all these kind of human experiences are fine. It doesn't matter. It's good to go into this. It's great to give yourself to the pursuit of other people's happiness to a point, but you can only do that to a point, because they will journey their journey as is appropriate for them, irregardless of what you think and irregardless of what you may try to do. So that's essentially what I wanted to share with you today, the creation game. We're all in this game together, and we are creating meaning for the fun of it. And the more you experience yourself truthfully, the more you develop your awareness and substantiate your awareness by living a holistic lifestyle, by maintaining a meditation practice, the more you realize and experience meaning from that perspective. And so life is a game, and life is entertaining. It doesn't mean that you're always joyful. It doesn't mean anything in terms of of having a constant experience on the surface of who you are, or your ego. Your ego is still an ego, and it's going to have its ups, it's going to have its downs. It's going to present you with what it always presented you with, but the way you handle that egoic experience is going to radically change. And so, as the power of your ego decreases and the power of your truth increases, so will your overall experience gradually rise up and up in terms of becoming more of a joyful celebration of life, non-stop. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And it's been a while since I've done a live stream. I was very happy to come back on and start up again. And I do hope that you find this of some value. And if you do, then it is more than worth it for me to do what I do here. So with that being said, I'm going to sign off until next Monday, where I'll share another contemplative focus with you.